I'm here with the lovely and talented Melissa Bonny to talk about Ad Infinitum's latest record, Chapter 3 Downfall, out March 31st on Napalm Records. She's on tour right now with Camelot, living her dream. Living her dream. And before we talk about the record, let me just quickly ask you, how's the tour going so far?
It's fantastic. We had yesterday night the most amazing show, the like so epic. It's incredible. I'm having a blast.
Yeah, I can see the smile goes from ear to ear. You're definitely living
Yeah.
your dream. Now let's talk about this record, Chapter 3 Downfall. What was the main inspiration behind this album?
So for the first and second record, we chose some historical character to guide the songwriting, especially the lyrics. We chose two men, so we thought this time we would choose a woman, and we brainstormed and chose Cleopatra. And when you talk about Cleopatra, you cannot skip the ancient Egypt mythology. So we're also talking about lots of ancient Egypt gods.
Does that, when you have a defined path, when you have a defined concept, for lack of a better term, does that make the lyrical content and writing the lyrics for the albums a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, especially this one because there's a lot of terms that we use in today's language that don't fit. For example, I remember I was writing lyrics and I was writing something about the devil, and I was like, no, it doesn't work actually. So I had to think differently to avoid some terms that are, I don't know, I don't want to say very Christian because it's not that I'm especially Christian, but it's just common expressions of today that just don't fit this historical period. So that was my biggest challenge, I would say, for this record.
When you think about the sound on this album, did you guys consciously want to grow and evolve what you did in the first two records, and then maybe, flex your wings a little bit more on this one? How was that process of evolution for you?
We spent more time on the orchestrations, also on the special effects that you can hear here and there, um, as well as some ambience, like some ambient sounds that will remind you of Egypt, some Oriental vibes here and there. Um, Adrian especially spent a lot of time searching for lots of nice, cool sound effects. Um, and when we wrote, we also did this work of for the riffing also. You couldn't completely, I guess you couldn't really connect album number one and album number two musically to the periods that we were referring to in the lyrics, but this time you can read the lyrics connected to ancient Egypt, but you can also listen and be like, oh, this is a little bit Oriental, isn't it?
I also thought when I was listening to this album, it feels like you guys took some things from the first record and some things from the second record, almost like you took the best things that you guys did in the first album, the best things that you guys did in the second album, you put it all together, and there you go with your third record. Do you see it in that same perspective?
Yeah, I see it first of all as a continuity um, of the second record because it's also very modern
Mhm.
compared to the first one. But there's, I would say, more orchestrations than on the second record, less than on the first one. So it's in the middle while being still an evolution.
Yeah, I felt like the organic feel that you guys had in the first album, that first record, that feel, that smell of new, you guys kind of brought that back into this album. It feels very organic, but the production behind this album is even better than the production on the second album. So it kind of allows you
Thank
to
you.
see different kind of growth, and it's really interesting. It makes this the more mature album across the three. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. And it also simply has to do with the fact that we grew as musicians and songwriters and as a band. Now we know each other even better. We know how we work. We have a working dynamic, and we acquire more skills album after album. So it's also interesting to see what we can do now with each instrument that we couldn't do before, and yeah, we're very happy with the result.
Have the processes behind the album, the creative processes, the recording process, have they become more complex with every record, or do you feel like knowing what you've learned from the previous albums, they actually feel a lot simpler?
I think it's simpler to write together, while we feel a little bit more pressure because it's stupid, but people loved I mean, some people loved the first album, some people loved the second album, and we want to do something that is true to ourselves while still um giving people who love the first and second record something that they will like. So it's this balance between evolving as a musician, doing something that is true to yourself, but also thinking about what the band is about for people.
You talked about growth within the band, but let's talk a little bit about your own personal growth. From the first record to this record, you've done a lot. You've done a lot of different collaborations. You've been on the new Camelot record now. Like you've toured a lot more than you were doing back when the first record came out. How much of these collaborations with other artists, other bands, touring has given you the necessary tools for you to take at Infinitum into the next level?
Mm. Lots of experience, simply, whether it's while touring, recording. I Now that I'm on stage with Camelot, I see a lot of what's happening behind the scenes with the production that is much bigger than the production we have with my own band. Um, and also, something that is very, very interesting is when I was in the studio recording the song that I sang for Camelot, that I recorded with Camelot, I heard some very nice production details because you have the single tracks. You don't have a final mix. You have single tracks in your ears, and you hear everything that's happening, and the dimension and all the layers. And it's something that's I love to see because I learn from it, and it gives me ideas also for the next recordings without stealing anything, but with understanding how they build their sound. I'm like, oh, this is a nice detail. This is something I never did with my voice. This is, it's super interesting. And also with the collaborations with Feuerschwanz, for example, same, bigger team, bigger production, and it gives you, like, on top of the experience, the will to get there, because it's so enjoyable.
It's the drive. It gives you that drive.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys went with Jacob Henson for the production on this record. I have to ask you this. I know Jacob. He's an outstanding producer. Why does everybody want to work with him?
he's he's very, very good at what he does, first of all, um, while being an incredible person. And first of all, with our music, with so many layers, with the metal stuff, but also the orchestrations, the special effects, etc. It's a lot of tracks, and Jacob has a way to make every single track shine while being part of the whole thing, which means you will listen to it and you will hear those details as if you're in this big room and there's something happening here, something happening there, but still it sounds like a whole thing. And it's very difficult because, like I said, there's so many things happening that finding a place for each thing it's serious work, and he has so much experience with this.
This album, once again, I felt like we got more of your clean vocals as we did in the previous record, and it seems like a sorry, a continuation into this record, which I absolutely love, because it matches really well with the theme of the record, with the lyrical content. Do you see that as an area of your vocal range that you can work more on and therefore do more? And that's why you tend to focus a little bit more on that versus the harsher side of your range?
Yeah, for me, the clean vocals are it's literally the thing that I can, how to say, I can tell much more with clean vocals than I can with growls. And there's so many techniques. I feel like growls are just one tool in the toolbox, and the rest, you know, soft, warm vocals, powerful, um, belting, more symphonic stuff, like more how to say, um, um, operatic. I don't know, or um, yeah, there's just so many tools that for me the growl is just one of them. And I'm learning more and more and more about clean vocals and what I can do with this, and I'm mastering it more and more. So for me it's just a joy to to use all of these tools and not to do 50-50, for example. So it's always interesting to put the growls where it feels like it will bring something and not overdo it.
And I think you've mastered that perhaps on the second record, but you really defined it on this one, because that's exactly what the record needs. And I really enjoy the cleaner side of your range, and I've seen an evolution. So I have to ask you, does the evolution and the comfort within that evolution of your range, does that come just from the experience, all the projects or the things you're working on, or do you actually do some specific work on some specific areas that you want to improve?
Both. um I felt, for example, after the European tour that we did in October, November, that my voice got to a point where it was never before, with agility, technique. So it's working on it more and more, that develops it, but also individually, like techniques that I want to learn, that I practice at home. So it's a mix between singing a lot and also focusing on something that I hear, for example, in one genre, in another, and I'm like, oh, that would be cool in metal, or something that I see from one singer that I admire, and I'm like, oh, this is super cool. I want to learn this, and I work on it at home.
When you're going to the market, picking up some fruits and some vegetables for lunch, and you meet somebody and they ask you what do you do, and you say, "Oh, I'm a singer." How do you define yourself to somebody who's never heard you of what kind of vocalist you are?
um, I don't know. I'm a fruit salad. There's a little bit of everything.
They will know exactly the same as they did before, which they'll be so confused by by what's
No,
happening. If you
I
had to introduce a fan, or if you had to introduce a listener to the band, to Ad Infinitum, what song would you pick as the best way to introduce somebody to the band that has never heard the band before?
I think currently I would pick Upside Down, because there's um, the party side of Ad Infinitum. There's the growls, something a little bit calmer. There's a little bit of everything. But now that I think of it, I'm just trying to picture the set list of the new records to see. I think actually maybe Eternal Rains, which is gonna be, well, released with the record, but also we will have a video for it. This one also pictures very well what we do in terms of energies, riffing, um, yeah, and vocals going from one end to the other.
The other. One last question for you, and before I ask you this last question, let me just say the reason why we're here is because you sent me a message wishing me happy birthday, and and see, this is what happens. You send me a message wishing me happy birthday, and next thing you know, I'm taking your time while on tour to talk about the record. So that teaches you a lesson. Next time, don't wish me happy birthday when you're on tour. So last question for you. I don't want to take any more of your time. And now that you've achieved that dream. Like we've known each other for a long time. When we first talked, Camelot was a huge thing that you wanted to, dreamed of being on tour with them, perhaps being on a record. You check those two boxes now, and that's incredible. Like I'm so happy for you. It's like I'm on tour with Camelot right now, so I'm really proud of you and happy for you. But I have to ask you
Thank
this.
you.
Now you've been there. Will we see Tommy on an Ad Infinitum track in the future? Just like, you know, I scratch your back, you scratch mine?
I didn't even think about it, to be honest. I mean, of course, at some points we talked about having guests, and of course, his name came to the discussion. But I don't know actually. For the upcoming record, no, because you already know who the singers are. I mean, the singers, the the guests.
Mhm.
Um, but um, but it actually obviously it would be fantastic.
So there's something to think about, something to talk while on tour right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus, he's almost Canadian. I don't know if you know that, but he's very close to getting his citizenship and his passport. And Canadian people tend to be very polite and very nice. So we always say yes, we always say please, and we always say sorry.
Ah,
So I don't think he's going to turn.
I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll how to say?
You'll pitch
I'll
it.
use his Canadian side.
Yeah, yeah.
You cannot say no.
Appeal to his Canadian side. Appeal to his Canadian side.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa,
Yeah,
thank you
yeah.
very
No,
much.
he's very kind.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for your time, Melissa. Thank you for taking the time while on tour. I hope the tour goes wonderfully well for the rest of the leg that you guys have. And I hope to see you
Thank
with
you.
Camelot in North America very soon in support of their record. So that way we can have a chat in person for the first time ever.
Oh yeah, that's true. That would be so fantastic to finally meet you. We've been talking for years now.
It will be amazing. It'll be amazing. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that there will
Yeah,
be an announcement soon and we'll see you here in North America touring with Camelot. So thank you very
with
much.
great pleasure.
Take
Thank you
care.
for having me again. Take
Oh, no,
care. Bye bye.
my pleasure. Bye.